He said he'd be here.
All aboard! Next stop, Chicago Junction.
Yes, it's Chicago Junction, being the radio program that is everything about the wonderful world of trains. Now here's our boss, the head of the Windy City Hometown Radio Network, as well as being the chief electrical engineer, Mr. John DeVita.
Well, thank you, Brian. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Chicago Junction from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Monday, May the 4th, the year 2015. Today, the panel will be talking about railroads and model railroads. And now, to start today's broadcast, here's our announcer, Mr. Brian. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Now here's our host who tries to keep us in line, Mr. Jack Red Ryan.
Keep you in line. I don't know if it's possible. By the way, Brian, from now on I'm billed as the Brian Williams of Windy City Hometown Entertainment. Okay?
Okay.
Remember that. How's your golf game?
Me too. Yeah.
Me too. I can never get the ball through the windmill in the final hole.
Yeah, that's a rough one.
In the clown's mouth?
Yeah, timing's always off.
So anyway, hello everyone. Welcome. We're glad you're here. If you are there. No, we're glad you're here. We're glad to be here, and I hope you enjoy yourself half as much as we do. This is our monthly get-together about the railroad, the world of rail, and history, and model rails, and you name it. Whatever's going on that's involved, and there isn't much we don't do in our world which wouldn't be touched by the railroad. Certainly it was one of the greatest inventions ever. I mean, as far as spreading the mankind, being able to cover greater distances, and even before the airplane gang. And I know a lot of young kids can't remember, can't imagine there were a time where there were no airplanes, but, well, none of us, we don't fit into that, do we, any of us? No. But anyway, even jet planes, right? So, or remember when they were called aeroplanes? At the end of King Kong, the aeroplane took care of that guy, Mr. Dunham. Aero, A-E-R-O. So, without further ado, we're going to start to the left, and we'll go clockwise, introducing. We can wind up with, we have a guest star today. Cornelius Vanderbilt the Fifth. No, he couldn't make it. Go, Doug.
Hi, this is Doug Kenyuk. I represent the Railroad and Short Lines Club of Chicago. The website's rscc.dhke.com, and we're going to talk about some local railroad news.
Okay. Brian?
This is your announcer, Brian Valou, and I'm retired from the U.S. Navy and the railroad, where I was an engineer and conductor. I'm a member of the Chicago Area Garden Railway Society. I was a member of the Lionel Club as a model railroader and a live steam operator with the Cincinnati Cinder Sniffers.
You got to explain some of these highly esoteric terms about a guy you need to understand that.
What, that I'm a cinder sniffer?
Yeah.
That's the name of the live steam club in Cincinnati.
Oh, okay. Now,
they run. These are the locomotives that are. It was the original Garden Railroad.
Okay.
And these are the steam locomotives that people sit and ride on. Okay. 1.5 inch equals 1 foot, so 7.5 inch gauge track.
Very good. And you were an engineer, as was Dave, right?
Yes, he was my instructor.
Really? Oh, I think you said that before. I probably forgot. You know, when you get your head full of so many facts over these years, you can't access them as rapidly as you like. You know, am I right? It's kind of like having an overloaded computer.
Yeah, so we can talk to Mr. David Darushka.
Dave, hi.
Or as my nephew calls me, David Darushka. Retired locomotive engineer for about 5 railroads. Last one being Metra. I'm a member of the Railway and Locomotive Historical Society. I'm a member of the National Railway Historical Society. I do our Facebook page, Chicago Junction Facebook page, and I write a blog on Chicago Railroad history called Player with Railroads.
Okay. That's a blog. Is there a particular website or you really use for that, or?
Chicago Railroads at blogspot.com.
What we can probably Google it with.
You just Google Player with Railroads, and it's usually like the second choice in the search.
We want to be linking up with that sort of thing. All of our friends that come in and our guests. And speaking of guests, we have John Picciotto.
Yes.
Picciotto.
Yes.
From where are you from, John?
Originally from the west side of Chicago.
Where about?
Chicago and Central.
I mean, and you're representing.
I currently work at Lombard Hobbies. I'm past board member of Chicago chapter NRHS, past member and officer of the Oak Park Society Model Engineers, and currently retail sales at Lombard Hobbies in Lombard, Illinois.
And that's big model trains, among other things.
We are primarily a train store. We do have a small smattering of plastic models and rockets, but if you want modern model railroad, both in N and HO, ours is the store to go to.
What's the name again?
Lombard Hobbies.
Okay, and do you have a website too?
Yes, we do. It's Lombard Hobby, HOBBY.com.
Okay, we're gonna link eventually. I said we're gonna link things like that up with our website on WindyCityHometown.com, and try to have a registry of that. That's our idea. Try to get information out to everybody, and we can. So, okay, who's got any information for us today?
Well, we were talking about a bunch of things earlier. Lincoln Funeral Train, what's going on with that?
The Lincoln funeral car is just about finished. All the fine tuning on it, basically done, and she's getting ready to be trucking down to Springfield for a couple photo opportunities with the celebrations, and the official unveiling on May 2nd, as was talked about by Shannon.
Right. I last time we called, there was no answer. They must have been really getting busy, because we've talked to Shannon Brown how many times? 4 or 5 times, or something like that and then she is with the committee, and was it the Lincoln? What's their what the Lincoln?
The 2015
Lincoln
Funeral Train.
.org, right?
.org.
Right. Yes, you'd get it anyway. It wouldn't be very hard to get, but it was the most interesting project, and obviously it's devotion to something like that. It's
oh yeah, trust me, it's next to building the steam locomotive. This was is really close to his heart. He's one of them really big guys on Lincoln.
No, who's that?
Dave Clokey.
He was
the builder.
Okay. And it was done where? A lot of work here in Elgin?
In Elgin, yeah, at his shop in South Elgin.
Yeah, so they'll be going to Springfield. We just passed, I remember everyone was announcing the end of the 150th anniversary of the end of the Civil War, 150th anniversary of the assassination of Lincoln. It was the 15th, I believe, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so anyway, it's rolling right along. It seems like we just had our bicentennial year, and now, oh well, time marches on and waits for no man, correct? Okay, what anybody else got some we want to start with? Or?
Well, we got, I was called by a friend of mine to go to the BN yard and see several flat cars that are being transferred from the Burlington Northern Santa Fe over to Norfolk Southern. The locomotives are on their way to Cleveland for rebuilding. The locomotives themselves came from Washington, the owner at the time, and the locomotive was actually the original Reading T1. Their first northern locomotive, built in 1945, and it's going to Cleveland for a total rebuilding.
2100?
Yep.
So, I was built in 1946. Got a lot in common, though, huh? Time for rebuild me too, I think. So, yes, Dave, got something?
Yeah, I got something, Mid-Continent Rail Museum update. Work continues on the Chicago Northwestern 460, number 1385, at the Mid-Continent Railway Museum of North Freedom, Wisconsin. The historic 1907 built 10-wheeler last operated in 1998 before coming due for an extensive rebuilding. In early January, volunteers finished repainting the frame, which has been thoroughly overhauled at Spec Machine in Middleton, Wisconsin. At the same time, 1385 63-inch drive wheels are being rehabilitated at the Strasburg Railroad in Pennsylvania and are slated to be returned shortly. Repair work includes the replacement of several crank pins and hub liners. The 1385's original tender, out of service since 1963, was rebuilt utilizing the original frame and a brand new 7,500-gallon tender tank along with new roller bearing trucks, and is ready to mate with the locomotive. Work also continues on the privately owned Saginaw Timber Company's 282 number 2, which has been out of service at the museum since 2000. The rebuilt boiler has been successfully steam tested, and the boiler jacketing was recently reinstalled. Owner Skip Lichter hopes to return the 1912 Baldwin to the rails before the end of the year. And in May, Mid-Continent will auction off several pieces of surplus equipment, including Alabama, Tennessee, and Northern 210 number 401, Louisiana Cypress Lumber Company 262 number 2. The latter operated at the museum in the 1960s but has been stored disassembled for many decades. Also for sale is the tender from CNNW 460 number 1361, which was used with 1385 from 1963 to 1998. Income from the auction will be used to further museum restoration projects. And that is from Railfan and Railroad Magazine. We must credit our sources here.
Now, the numbers you give, I'm being playing the devil's advocate, I think, are those engines?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. I see. I used to be an investigator. I could figure these things out. What? Anything else?
Yeah, but you can't find your way out of a paper bag. That's a
I
problem.
can't punch my way out. That's for sure.
Okay, I got some local news.
Doug?
Yeah, over on Indiana, the Hoosier Valley Railroad Museum. The rail line there from Wellsboro to La Crosse to Malden is owned by the town of North Judson. Apparently, North Judson wants to get rid of the Chesapeake and Indiana and bring in a new operator. Chesapeake and Indiana is refusing to leave. So they're now over at the STB fighting this out.
STB, the...
Surface Transportation Board.
Okay.
And on a side note, over at La Crosse had one of their grain elevators blow up last week. Injured 4 people.
What happened?
Grain elevator blew up. So they're having a little bit of problems down there. That could be interesting because the town of North Judson, according to their filing, it's adverse discontinuance of service, which means they're trying to break the contract. And of course, Chesapeake, Indiana, say no, and they want to invoke another extension of it. They have the option to take an extension. So it's going to be interesting to see how that spills out.
Probably take forever.
Yep.
But, you know.
Now, down in Morton, Illinois, there's a big transload. Then the materials they transload is insecticides. And TP&W wanted to end service to there, claiming that the rail was no good. And yet they got pictures of them pulling their tank cars in and out. So the company's called Fort Transfer. They decided their contract with the Keokuk Junction to service just that little piece of track, which is about 10 miles long. Well, miracle of miracles, the TP&W went in and fixed the track, so the track is now serviceable again. But what TP&W wanted to do was have them go to another town and truck the stuff 25 miles over instead of fixing the track. And the North Fork Southern's in the middle of this because this piece of track crosses the North Fork Southern, and they were saying, well, we'll have to fix the crossing and stuff. Well, they were claiming somewhere between $300,000 to $1 million to fix a piece of rail.
Now, whose idea was it to have the trucks pick it back over
The TP&W.
That's the railroad?
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds like a governmental thing to me. You know?
No, this was...
You don't want to kill a job, right?
They're hiding behind the government because they claimed the FRA came in and said the rail that crossed the street was no good. So that's why they suspended service.
Oh, well.
So now, Appleton, Wisconsin's got an interesting problem. apparently the C&W had built a spur across the Fox River to service a dairy plant that's now closed. A long time ago it closed. So Appleton, Wisconsin contacted the UP and said, what are you going to do about this bridge? Fix it or remove it? Union Pacific says, we don't own it. So they went to the CN. CN says, we don't own it. So Appleton right now is trying to find out who owns this railroad bridge.
Is it a mystery? Is it that much of a mystery, really?
It's a mystery.
Everybody's denying ownership of it. What a lot of people think happened was that section of track went to the Fox River Valley, which ended up in the CN cap.
CN is...
It's Canadian National.
Okay, that's right. Canadian.
So that's what's going on there. So again, a whole bunch of filing and lawsuits now, trying to figure out who owns this railroad bridge.
Maybe it belongs to the Reading Railroad.
So,
Yeah, the Fever became part of the Wisconsin Central, along with the
Yep.
Green Bay and Western.
that's right.
And then the Canadian National took over Wisconsin Central.
Yep. Well, that's interesting because I got some stuff on those guys coming up. But what CN did was they never folded those ownerships officially into them. They're still owned as separate entities.
Okay.
And if you look at STB filings, like for instance, Illinois Central abandons the track, not the CN. Okay, Wisconsin Central is closing down the northern part of the EJ&E, not the CN. Okay, and they kept that ownership separate. Some track rights, Sioux Line, again another CN property, has to file to get track rights that operate over the DM&E, both of which are owned by the CN. But because the CN kept them under separate ownership, they have to file for trackage rights.
Is the Sioux Line CP or CN?
CP.
CP,
Okay,
yeah.
so then they're not same ownership.
Yeah, that
now.
makes more
Right,
sense.
that makes more sense, right. Okay, so Sioux Line is getting track rights over the DM&E between Goodville, Minnesota and Tracy, Minnesota. It's about 223 miles of track rights. So then the DM&E is getting track rights over the Sioux Line for 132 miles between Goodridge and Bluff, Minnesota. So they're swapping right-of-ways, basically. That makes sense? Don't know. I think they're both owned by the same company, so not sure what's going on here. I mean, this is the filings off the STB. You read through it to get nice maps, nice pictures. Illinois Central is abandoning some track down in Champaign County between Bonneville and Seymour, Illinois, 8 miles. Some kind of grain spur that the grain company shut down, so no point in keeping the track.
When you say abandoning, what do you mean?
They're just abandoning the track.
Just it, goodbye?
That's it, yeah. Shut it down, sell it off, and
But it's still a railroad right-of-way, correct?
yes and no. When it's abandoned, the ownership reverts to if the land was leased from the farmers or acquired from the farmers, it goes back to them or
Okay.
the landowners. If it was leased, it goes back to the person they leased it from.
Mm-hmm.
If the railroad walks away from it, then the county gets it, and then the county can give it to the state, or they can make it a rail trail, or just leave
Yeah,
it.
there's a lot of big movement in this country for what they call trails.
Rails to trails.
Rails to trails, where abandoned trackage is turned into biking and hiking paths.
Which they just did up here on the Bloomingdale line.
Right,
It's going to open June 7th.
right.
Okay, Union Pacific is ending service up in Wisconsin, Waukesha County. It's some industrial lead that's a mile long, something internal in the city. City's pushing them out, basically. Let's see. Wisconsin Central up in the Fox River sub in Kahuna. That's Kuakauna, Wisconsin. That's about another mile worth of track being turned into a rail trail, targeted specifically by the city. Then we got the one where the Long Island Railroad's fighting with cemetery's fighting with the Long Island and New York and Atlantic Railroad. In a nutshell, what happened was when the Long Island was first being put together in 1908, the cemetery had some land. The Long Island leased it from them for a yard and what we now call transload. And they leased 2 different parts of the cemetery and built track on it, and one track's for yard, one track's for transload. Well, back in the 90s, the state got tired of running the freight service, so they broke off the freight service and gave it to the New York and Atlantic Railroad to run. Last year, the New York and Atlantic Railroad got tired of the transload and subleased it to somebody else to do the transload. Cemetery got wind of this and said, wait a minute, this is not in the original 1908 lease, and wants to kick everybody off their property.
I don't know. It must take a real real Wall Street lawyers, so LaSalle Street lawyers to figure some of this stuff
Well,
out.
you
Huh?
know, in Chicago, dead people have a lot of power.
Yeah. Yeah. Vote early and often.
Yeah.
So, and if you want to hear about the Bloomingdale line, it's called the 606.
Yeah.
Runs for about 5 miles or 6 miles.
Sure.
Yeah, something like that. It runs from basically almost Pacific Junction up to Ashland Avenue in Chicago. Was the former Milwaukee Road line, and then it became Sioux Line, then CP. They fell. No, all the industries disappeared. So now it's going to be a bike trail.
Yeah, we were talking about this before, weren't we?
Yeah.
That place. Now, it's really funny, sitting here as being the least, I'm sure the least railroad man at the table. This makes me think of the way banks merge and change names. I mean, we had a bank in the neighborhood was independent, and it was this, that, so-and-so, it's about in third or fourth name now. So,
Yeah, if you look at the history, especially in Chicago, of the railroads, and look at how many different railroads existed, and they were merged into various railroads at certain times, usually because of financial difficulties. And we were talking earlier about the B&O buying up a lot of old railroads in Chicago at fire sale prices during a financial panic.
yeah, that's just a way like a lot of little towns merge into the city because hard times. Anywho, got anything more?
Well, let's see. There is a nonprofit group.
Brian, I'm going to introduce you, Brian.
Yes. There's a nonprofit group called the Coalition for Sustainable Rail, and working in conjunction with the University of Minnesota, they want to show viable use for biofuel. Use solid biofuel, and their great thought was, well, we're going to rent a steam locomotive or buy a steam locomotive, rebuild it, and test it. And in the process of testing, we'll set a land speed record for steam. And they got a hold of a wonderful passenger, Hudson, out of Topeka, Kansas, one of the Santa Fe's. They were all set to move it. They cleaned it up. I mean, because it was on hard times. They cleaned it up, getting ready to move it, and 3 people in town got together and says, hey, you can't buy this. They already had signed the contract with the city and everything, and the caretakers of it. And they said, well, it came here from this group, so we restarted the group again. You can't take it. And, well, it's still sitting there. But they have a contract actually with the city and the owners that they were dealing with that they get right for first review with when the group is finished with the locomotive. They have right to first refusal to take the locomotive back before they give it to somebody else.
When you say when the group was finished, I mean reconditioning or?
Oh yeah, they're going to totally rebuild it.
Yeah. Oh,
The locomotive, it's one of the later locomotives. It was built in the 30s, late 30s, by Baldwin. And they're actually going to put streamlined casing on it. They're making Blue Goose 2. That's what they call their streamlined steam locomotive, the Blue Goose. And they're converting it from oil to solid biofuel.
which is coal?
No.
No?
It's made.
Birds.
Well,
They're actually thinking of using sugar cane.
oh, okay.
Oh, I thought
Things you can grow, bio. Oh, I get it. Not a biography, but
Rake your leaves and throw it in the firebox.
But they have a website. If you go to it's Sustainable Coalition CSR .com, or they have now a site specifically for the locomotive, the whole history of the locomotive and what's going to be done with it. Because 2 of the people that are on the committee with it are disciples, were students of Dante Porta, a man from Argentina who found ways to improve and steam locomotives. They could take a locomotive and actually improve the consumption of fuel by 35%. and make it more efficient with water. And these two, in fact, right now, there's a narrow gauge railway in Germany that they're rebuilding 2 of their locomotives and showing them how much more improvement they will have. And one of the guys working on it did a steam locomotive in South Africa called the Red Devil, who had a 40% increase in efficiency.
That means less fuel? Or
Less fuel to do the same amount of work.
Yeah, okay. That's sort of self-explanatory, even for a guy like me. The Red Devil. Sounds like a good moniker for me, huh?
There you go.
Introduce me that way the next time.
Okay.
The Red Devil.
All right.
611.
But,
Oh, yeah, 611. That's the big. That's going to be the biggie for us.
what's that?
The 611 is a locomotive number from the Norfolk and Western Railroad.
Mm-hmm.
It was a northern class locomotive of 484, semi-streamlined, and is the most powerful of the 484s ever built. And Norfolk and Western knew how to build a locomotive. And they've been rebuilding one now for 7 months, and it'll be unveiled on Memorial Day weekend. It's been rebuilt in Spencer, North Carolina, and Memorial Day weekend it'll do triumphant return to Roanoke, Virginia, where it was actually built. And it'll be used in the Norfolk Southern's 21st Century Steam program. And they already got schedule for June and July, and tickets go on sale May 2nd. Or no, May 6th.
Any Chicago?
Nope, they're only staying in Virginia at the time.
Okay.
Now, when you say the steam program, is that just like a special...
Excursions.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not on regular everyday use, or no?
No, not regular everyday use, but it'll traveling to different areas, pulling either employee specials or selling tickets for the public.
Kind of a treat or something, is that it? Mm.
Oh yeah, it is a treat.
I'm sure it is, yeah.
No, this locomotive is one of the cream of the crops from the Norfolk Western. These people took all the formulas for building steam locomotives and redid them and came up with more efficient locomotives.
They take best ideas from different and...
Yes. They took the best ideas from all 3 major builders and then did their own tweaking.
Now, who would the major builders be?
The Baldwin Locomotive Works, the American Locomotive Company, and Lima Locomotive Works. Actually, Lima Machine and Locomotive.
LIMA?
Yep. Lima, Ohio.
It'd be Lima, Peru, but Lima, Ohio.
That's correct.
It'd be Des Plaines, France, but Des Plaines, Illinois. Isn't that about the same thing?
Yep. Versailles, France.
In Versailles.
And Versailles, Kentucky.
Or they say Marcellus down here. Marseilles, Illinois.
Yep.
For the where the radar is, the weather radar. And well, what can we say? What do we know?
Well, there's always Devon Street.
Yeah, Devon. That's correct. Devonshire. We don't say Devonshire. How come it's...
I could be rude and say something really nasty, but
Go ahead. We can censor it.
well, the streets that are named after a certain part of the female anatomy that sound just like it.
No, let's not go there. I know that one. How many streets rhyme with? Yeah, I know.
Oh, I think somebody's trying to wave to me and
I
say
think
it's
it's
time for a
break time.
break.
Oh, it's a
Now, when
break.
we get back, John, you're going to be under the hot lights.
Okay.
It's your turn. Take a little break, folks.
You are listening to Chicago Junction on Jack FM 89.7, WRHS FM Norwich, and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network from the John DeVita Broadcast Center
Yeah, what's a good
on
track for
Monday,
beginners? What's
May
the
the
track for
4th,
advanced?
the year 2015. And this is Jack FM 89.7, WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois. And now, back to Chicago Junction and our panel.
Welcome back, everyone. That was a nice break we had. We got on the swings and the teeter-totters, a little recess for us, and we're back. And right now, we're going to center. We've got the reports. Everyone get your questions ready. Our special guest, John, let me say it again now. I'll get it straight. John Piasciotto?
Pishoro.
Piasciotto, okay. And you are from, once again, Lombard Hobbies.
Yes, sir.
And you're a long time railroad buff, correct?
I got involved in a hobby when I was 15, 16, and
That's just a few years ago, right?
a couple. And by my early 20s, I started retailing out of, I can't think of it, Hills Hobbies out of Park Ridge. And I've been involved with excursions with Mr. Valou over here, and built model railroads, designed model railroads, built locomotives and cars for people, and selling and talking about trains for the last 30 years.
This is something that really get into one's blood, isn't it? My dad had described it the same way. I mean, it was like, in the first place, what kids don't like railroad? My little 3-year-old grandson, he loves trains now and trucks and dinosaurs and trains especially.
Well, as I tell our customers to come into the store, I go ahead and look around. The first taste is free.
Kind of like Baskin Robbins.
Yeah.
So, okay. Now, is there any particular, like, of course, new trends or new things to know about in the models?
You know, in the last 25 years, the hobby has really changed from what it was. I was thinking about this as I was driving up here, that you had a great toy train influence as far as how things were built by the manufacturers to I guess, shotgun to as wide a range of people as possible. And the aspect of the hobby I was involved in was repainting and redetailing locomotives and custom building track and building layouts. And now everything is pretty much take it out of the box, put it on the track, and run it. And we have track sections. When I was a kid, it was just a section of track, and it kind of maybe stayed together. And you know, you had to upgrade was to go and hand build your own track and handle your own switches. And now we have stuff that just snaps together, and you lay it on a table, snap it together, plug in your power supply, and you're gone.
Prefabs.
Yes, sir.
What about, you still must have room to be able to use a little paper mache or something if you want some mountains or, no?
Some paper mache, but a lot of plaster on top of
Plaster?
foam core, or
What is
pink insulation foam, blue insulation foam.
Okay.
Stack it up, glue it together, carve it to a shape, and then throw plaster over it and throw some paint on it and some ground up foam rubber, and it looks like a hill.
Questions, anyone, please?
Okay, John, why don't you explain to everybody what DCC is?
Okay. In the old days, we had two types of power to run trains. One was alternating current. As you guys, if you played with Lionel, everything Lionel ran on alternating current with a reverser mechanism in it. You'd shut it off, turn it back on, shut it off, turn it back on, and you'd be running in the other direction. Primarily, the other stuff was all direct current, which is you have a reversing switch which reverses the polarity, and a rheostat to turn the power up to 12 volts and then turn it all the way down. That was direct current. Nowadays, we have what is called digital command control. It's an evolution of an idea from the 60s, where now we have a handheld computer, we call a throttle. We tell the computer what locomotive we want to talk to. We have a microprocessor, a little computer inside the locomotive called a decoder, and we dial up the number, acquire it, and start running that particular locomotive or that particular string of locomotives. And I don't have to worry about varying any voltage anywhere. There's constant current on a track, and I have constant headlight and lights and sound, and it's being called the wave of the future. But as I've been telling people who come in the store, it's the way things are run now.
No,
You know,
Now, is there any number of trains you can run that way, or is it limited? Or
Well, let's see.
I mean, how many would you want to run anyway?
I have a myriad associates who have large layouts in the Chicago area, and the one I use as an example has his basement has 2,800 square feet of railroad. He's got about 3,000 freight cars on it and about 300 locomotives. And the last time I dispatched on his layout, we ran 47 trains in a session.
Wow.
You know, it allows you to run your trains and not worry about, oh, well, what power to what track, and you don't worry about that. You just worry about sending your trains out there and letting them run.
Isn't there the manufacturers of DCC do have some limits?
The big three are Lens, Digitrax, and NCE for systems, and I want to say the limit is about 1,000 locomotives, or is it 10,000? It depends on which system you get, but the big systems have more capacity than you will ever need for 99% of the model railroads out there.
Question.
You were talking about sound systems before. How many different types are there?
Well, it used to be that you had a stationary sound system running power through your rails to a receiver in the locomotive, and now, remember I said we have decoders in the locomotive. It's a microprocessor, a little computer. Now that has sound programmed into it, and you plug a speaker in and into the locomotive, and there's, I'd say, 1, 2, 3, 4, we'll say 3 major manufacturers producing sound for locomotives nowadays. And the decoders, I've had retired railroaders come into the store and go, okay, how does this sound to you? It says, well, it sounds like the stuff I used to run, so that tells me it's good quality sound. And the latest thing is from TCS. It's called Wow Sound, and there's an aspect of DCC where you have to program the locomotives. Everything comes with base features in it. It's like your car. Well, you can trick it out and change this, change that. Well, with the decoders, it comes with the number 03 already programmed into it, so that way you can dial up 03 and run that locomotive. But most guys change it to a number based on a locomotive number. So if you got locomotive 1385, you program it to locomotive number 1385, and then when you want to run it, you go locomotive acquire 1385, hit acquire, and then you're running that locomotive. And it's very easy to do, although it's just, you got to pay attention at times. Some guys don't pay attention, and well, now instead of running a locomotive in front of them, they're running 130 feet away, and why is that locomotive going off the end of the railroad?
I think it sounds like when we were introduced to TMCC with Lionel, Train Master Control, and yeah, we can run up to 9 locomotives with one controller. And basically the same way, you can sit there and push locomotive, and usually you use the locomotive number on it. So, but it's only 2 digits basically. So you can use the last 2 numbers, first 2, and.
Well, all this stuff goes back to the 1960s. General Electric produced a system called ASTRAC, which was a carrier wave control system for model railroads. Why GE got into it, I don't have a clue. But they were in it, then they were out of it after about 5 years. And that evolved into several home-built systems, CTC 16, CTC 16E, CTC 80, which were all carrier wave control systems, which meant you still had a constant voltage on the track, and you had to dial in a frequency for a specific locomotive. Then in the 80s, a company out of Germany called Lens created a computer-based system, the Lens control system, which is the basis for DCC as we know it today. What happened was it allowed you to intermix a bunch of different decoders, actually run a non-decodered locomotive on DCC, and it allowed a wide variety of different programming options. So what happened was the National Model Railroad Association approached Lenz, got them to release the rights to produce their system outside of Germany, and also did some tweaks in it, and in the early 90s created DCC, which is what we use now. And the three big systems are still Lenz, Digitrax, and NCE. And I've played with them all, and those are about the most, what's the word I'm looking for? Easy to use plug and chug capability. I've had people come in the store and tell me, oh, I'm resurrecting my old model 4x8 model railroad, and I got 2 cabs on it, and I want to go DCC. I'm going to have to tear all the wiring out. No, you don't have to do that. You take one power pack, unscrew the 2 wires off the back, plug them in, wire them into the little plug, assemble your little panel, screw that onto your layout, plug it into the back, plug the power supply into the other side of the panel, and take your handheld throttle and plug the wire into it and plug it in the front of the panel, turn your power on. And I said, you know, all those little switches going from cab A to cab B to control the blocks? Yeah. Flip them over to whichever cab you just replaced, and now you're running DCC. And gentlemen, that was an exact conversation I had at Christmas time several years ago with one guy, and he says, oh, no, it can't be that easy. I said, yeah, it is. This is not rocket science. You know, they want you to play with this stuff, so that way you come and you spend more money on it.
You do sell rockets, though.
Yes, we do. But he came back the next week and bought another locomotive. He said it took precisely about 5 minutes to do exactly what I did and follow the instructions in the book. And he was playing on a 25-year-old layout. I said, all you really have to do is clean the tracks and make sure they're clean before you start anything. And he says, you know, since then he's a constant customer of mine. So, but I like DCC because it allows you to do so many different things at a relatively easy way to do it. Any other questions?
I mean, if you have a big complex layout, I guess it would be advantageous to have it then.
Oh, got it.
But you know, if you have a small layout, do you really need all that?
You know, you don't need it, but with what's going on, if you want, for starters, if you want constant lighting, we used to create little circuits and little 1.5-volt bulbs, and now all that stuff's built into the system because you have a constant voltage on the track, and you dial up the locomotive, you turn the headlight switch on, you turn the ditch lights on, and if some locomotives, you hit the horn button and the ditch lights alternate on it, and that's all built right into the locomotive. Other things like sound used to be hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and now it's, you know, about $100 plus a speaker, and you plug it into the locomotive, dial it up, and run it.
The passenger cars stay constantly lit.
Oh my!
You got the cattle cars. When you hit them, the cows go nuts.
We've got
Seriously, they got the model cars. They got
Oh yeah.
the cattle cars.
you know, just for fun, we on another associate's layout, he got one of those, and you know, you got the cows moo 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 moo. We walk over and start smacking it with our fingers. You hear the cows go crazy in it. You know.
No, I remember when those systems were coming out in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
In the early 90s is when a lot of those soundboards started coming out. I mean, a friend of mine, they were selling clamps at an iHobby show. I think it was 92. And he says, asked how he's doing. He says, oh, I was doing great, but we were next to a table with a bunch of turkeys, you know. And what it was, they were selling the sound systems, turkeys, cows, eggs.
I thought you meant a bunch of Irishmen at first.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, John, another question for you. How's the quality of the models been or are becoming?
Well, that's something else I was thinking on the way up here. Back when I started in the 80s, the models and locomotives were pretty generic. You could buy, it was like an Earl Scheib paint job. You could buy one locomotive and 20 different paint jobs, and if we didn't make it now, we'll have it in 6 months because we're just going to turn around and
1995.
1995,
Was
and then a company called Kato out of Japan started contract. Well, they had been contracting for years to produce stuff for American manufacturer, but they produced a locomotive, which really just changed the hobby. It changed the hobby and how locomotives were presented. The hobby went from long production run generic locomotives to short production run highly detailed locomotives. And now if you look at some of the stuff coming out, you look at the real one, and the only difference is that there's no water in the toilet and those are the locomotive. And the paint jobs are phenomenal, the details are phenomenal, and they run 1,000 times better than the stuff in the 70s and 80s. You know, like I said, when I first got into the hobby, as far as stuff in the store, it's like, man, you just look, we sit there and we play with it and evaluate it, and I really haven't seen a bad locomotive come out from the major manufacturers in the hobby in the last 20 years.
how about the expenses? The expenses generally come down. I can remember, as an example, in another field, my Uncle Wall got one of the first Polaroid cameras in the early 50s, and it was very expensive. But as time goes by and something's on the market, it seems like prices, they moderate quite a bit.
Well,
is that true, you think?
I can't say that happened in the hobby industry. We went from generic locomotives back in the mid-'80s, anywhere from $12.95 to $15.95 up into the mid-30s. Nowadays, the base price of the base price of the locomotives are minimum $60. Up into some of the basic sound stuff is up into the $130, $200 range, and most sound-equipped locomotives are about $300 a piece. But having said that, they're produced. You look at the real one and you look at this one, and it's got all the lights and sound, and it's programmed so that it looks. All it doesn't do is smell like the real one.
And they're working on that.
Yes, they are.
One other factor must come in is, what is your dollar worth? I mean, call it inflation and.
Well, it's also the fact that stuff is not being. There's hardly anything being produced domestically.
Mm-hmm.
It's all produced primarily in Hong Kong, except for Kato still produces out of Tokyo, but there are very few items made in the United States in hobby business anymore. All the production went to China. A lot of factors, the major thing was labor cost. There's no EPA. There's no unions, although there is kind of now. And whereas American workers want to be paid $15, $20, $25 an hour, I think the guys in Hong Kong, their unions they're being paid in a $5 to $7 an hour range. And for them, that's a ton of money.
The tax system on the businesses is a big factor too. I know that.
Well, that too, and a lot of manufacturing was given tax incentives to move production overseas, and that affected the hobby business too. Because now, instead of having your own factory here with your own workers making it, now we've got stuff being produced overseas under contract, and when it comes out, it comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I noticed there is a trend that some of the manufacturing is coming back to the United States.
I haven't seen it.
Lionel in North Carolina is producing its own boxcars and tank cars, and they're getting ready to start do flats and guns.
Well, Lionel, when it was bought by General Mills in the late 1960s, moved their production from New Jersey to Mexico. And then when they spun it back off into the Lionel Trains Incorporated back in the late 1970s, they moved production back to Mount Clemens, Michigan.
Yes.
And now they've moved from Mount Clemens to North Carolina. And although they're still producing their locomotives out of Hong Kong under contract.
Yes, they are. It's doing it's only happened in the last 2 years that the freight cars are now, not all their freight cars, but some of them, specifically the box cars and not the scale ones. But they're still using a lot of parts made in China to help finish it, putting the wheels and stuff on. But they do want to, one company that's never left is still producing is Heartland Locomotive Works, but that's in G gauge.
That's I handle HO and N scale, and HO is about 80% of the market. And I can only think of two companies that currently produce anything in the United States, and one is Bowser out of Pennsylvania. And in fact, their most recent locomotives were, as I remember, designed and tooled here to be produced in Hong Kong. And the other company I know of making, there's a couple smaller companies, but the primary one is AccuRail out of Elburn, Illinois, and they're still producing their injection molding and painting in Elburn, as opposed to having stuff made overseas, because that's who they are and that's what they do.
Yeah, well, design preservation models, they're still produced here.
They're produced here.
Woodland Scenics.
Yes. Tangent is still produced here. KD is produced here. They're a company that makes they make couplers, which are the devices that couple the locomotives together. And an arm of them, it's actually a separate entity, is Micro Trains in N scale. They produce their stuff here.
Weaver's producing their stuff here.
Weaver's producing, but the vast
majority is overseas.
You talk to Walthers out of Milwaukee. They're a manufacturer and a distributor, and you can go to their website and buy stuff from them. Their stuff is produced overseas. Athearn, which was produced out of California till Mr. Irv Athearn passed away in the early 90s. It was sold to investors, and then they resold it to a distributor. All their manufacturing is produced out of Hong Kong. Atlas Model Railroad Company out of New Jersey. All their production is produced out of Hong Kong. And other smaller companies, Mike's Train House is out of Hong Kong. You guys are familiar with that in 3-rail.
Yeah.
This is the vast majority of stuff in HO that is sold. Bachmann, which has been around forever, is a toy train manufacturer, also has a scale model railroad line in HO, and all their stuff is produced out of Hong Kong.
In fact, the same factory that Lionel's being produced out of.
Yep. It's all under contract. In fact, I think Bachmann has such a relationship that they effectively own that factory, and other people contract with them and have to fit it into Bachmann's production schedule.
Yeah, because Aristocrat used to be made out of there.
But, the stuff is, whether we will eventually see production come back to the United States, I don't know. I can't say, because I'm not on a production end. I can see that there's a lot of short production runs, and a lot of things come out, and if you want to buy that locomotive and that paint scheme with those details, you better buy it now. If you know it's coming, save your pennies, order it from the store that you deal with, or whoever you deal with as far as buying your stuff, and you better buy it now, because in 2 weeks it'll be gone. I've seen it happen with the most recent run of Athearn locomotives. They produced a locomotive called a Jeep 38-2, and I had them on our website on Friday night, and by Monday afternoon I was sold out of one production of a locomotive, specifically locomotives painted for the Sioux line. One All four numbers in DCC ready locomotives were sold out. They were gone. And Monday morning we were on the phone with Horizon trying to get more. No, all gone. Short production run. So they've gone from constant producing to produce it, sell it, get your money, and go on to the next run.
They don't do any more, you mean? Never?
They might.
They could, but they
could.
don't. Yeah, okay, they
But,
won't.
you know, the lead time is 10 months to 16 months production. You know, we work in January of this year, we were ordering stuff for October, November, December of the fall, later in the year, because that's how stuff is. It has to be scheduled, it has to be produced, it has to be shipped, and it has to get to the distributor and then, be sent out. And, it's all a guessing game at that point.
All those steps in between. So you have to, okay, I get that.
Well, there is going to be a shakeup in manufacturing. 3D printing, even though it's slow right now, it takes about 6 hours to do a fair size item. Some guy in Silicon Valley's figured out how to do that same size item in 6 minutes. That's going to change manufacturing. They already demonstrated that they could build a house using a printer. They actually had this great big thing that would pour the cement and built the house up by layers of cement. Is it going to revolutionize and bring it back to the U.S.? That part's questionable. If you go out to shapeways.com and just put in trains or railroad, there's a whole blizzard of custom-made models already available. You got to finish it, of course, but the basic models already they print them up.
Well, as I said, when I was a kid, we got generic locomotives, and then we redetailed them with manufactured parts from like Details West, Details Associates, CalScale, and now I'm seeing modern parts being made with 3D printing relatively quick, and guys are it's another source for detail parts. But the shape of the hobby is it's not what it was when we were kids. It's not your typical Lionel trains anymore.
Well, what is? What is, John? You can't get a nickel candy bar for less than $1 these days, so what else? What else is gone? The old corner store, photo mats, parking meters, Woolworths, Kresge's is just Kmart left, and Sears owns them. So we're getting to the end, and I want to really thank you for coming down here today. And we could, anytime you like, you let us know.
Okay.
And we try to have a good time, don't we, gang? We don't. It doesn't succeed all the time. We try, at least try.
Oh, I've never had a bad moment here.
No?
Nope.
Oh. No. Hey, did you hear that, John?
Okay.
I hear it.
John DeVita.
Oh.
Oh, John.
I'm here. I hear it.
And I want to hear from the John DeVita. That's our boss, creator. It's his plush studio settings. We get to visit every week, month, not week. I tell my wife it's every week, though. Don't tell her any differently, please. So, listen, we're just about to the end of the line. Haha, very good. I didn't mean that one either. It's just
don't hit the bumping post, whatever you do.
Keep my daytime job, right?
Yep.
Gee, I wish I had one. Oh, wait a minute. I'm an election judge now. A couple times a year, anyway. Anyway, yeah, listen, thanks to our regular panel, Doug Kenyuk, Brian
So long,
Valou,
everybody.
Dave Darushka.
David Darushka.
David Darushka. What is your middle name?
Chester.
No, is it really?
Yeah.
DCD.
DCD.
Ooh, that sounds like a good name for a company, doesn't it? DCD Incorporated. We get a piece of that? That action when you incorporate?
yeah.
And John Pichetti?
Peixoto.
Peixoto. And thanks for coming down from
You're welcome, sir.
Lombard Hobbies, folks, in Lombard, Illinois. Stop in and see them and support the hobby. It might be them, might be someone else, but, get into it and get hooked. It'll keep us all happy. So listen, for the end of the line, remember one thing now. Happy rails to you. Until we meet again.
All aboard! Next stop, Chicago Junction.
Join us again next time when we take our railroad of imagination on our continuing journey through the wonderful world of trains. Chicago Junction is a production of the Windy City Hometown Radio Network and can be heard over this station. As well as at look at your computer and go to windycityhometown.com. You'll be able to hear. All the recordings of our shows may be heard. Once again, all aboard. This is your Brian. This is your announcer. Brian cannot get it right, Valoo. Thank you for listening. Oh yeah, the conductor was portrayed by Charlie Johnson, a struggling young actor in need of work. Please.
You have been listening to Chicago Junction on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Monday, May the 4th, the year 2015. Chicago Junction was produced by Jack Ryan, directed by John DeVita, and special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Zeflik of WRHS FM Norwich and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Seconda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Wednesday, April the 22nd, the year 2015. Until next time, please be safe and thanks for listening. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois, a Ridgewood Community High School radio station.